In 15 days, Derek Carr will have $40.4 million in future compensation become fully and completely guaranteed. We've known that for a while now, and that's why the Raiders benched Derek Carr for the final 2 games of the 2022 regular season. Reportedly yesterday, and multiple reports to this effect emerged, the Raiders have yet to give Derek Carr permission to shop himself to suitors. And it surprised me, but it didn't. Here's why it doesn't surprise me. I mean, it surprised me because we got 15 days to have a deal in place unofficially before that $40.4 million vests. And we've assumed all along that the Raiders are going to want to have a deal in place before that $40.4 million becomes fully and completely guaranteed. So that's why it surprised me. But it doesn't surprise me because if Carr has the ability to go try to set up his own trade, part of that conversation is going to be, well, if they cut you, we'll pay you more because we won't have to give them the draft picks they're looking for. So you've got that no trade clause. That's basically your way to short circuit the whole process. So how about this? You get cut and then we'll sign you for X, which is more than we'd be willing to pay you. If we have to trade for you, we would want you to redo your contract to account for the fact that we had to give up a second-round pick or whatever to get you. So I think that's why the Raiders don't want to give Carr that license, because once you allow the communications, there's no way to police what the communications are going to be, Myles.
Yeah, and that to an extent makes sense. But then at that point, it's kind of, how are you going to trade the guy if this is what the deal is, right? I mean, this just seems to me to be more preamble to the inevitability that if the Raiders want to save that $40.4 million, then they're going to have to cut him. I mean, I don't really see the other way around it. And I got Raiders fans in my mentions last night telling me that there's some obscure rule that he can't talk to these guys anyway, and it doesn't matter. And, why shouldn't Dave Ziegler be working the phones and this and this, that? Well, mostly because the Raiders decided that they were going to move on from Derek Carr in December because they didn't play him, so that they could save themselves from that $40.4 million becoming guaranteed, because Derek Carr can't pass a physical. So we already know this. And if I know this, and Mike, if you know this, then, the other 31 teams in the league also know it. So because Derek Carr has a no trade clause, because that $40.4 million is coming to him guaranteed in the middle of February, we'll know that there's kind of a drop dead date here. And if it just so happens that the Raiders realize that, they don't really believe that a trade can get done, then I guess that's why you wouldn't give him permission to seek out a deal. But Max, if I'm another team, why would I have a conversation with you if I don't even know that Derek Carr is interested in this because he has a no trade clause? The whole thing kind of doesn't make sense to me when you put it together as a puzzle.
Here's my theory. And I think it's possible the Raiders have thought this through every which way they possibly can, and they realize there's no alternative to cutting Derek Carr. There's no way we're going to have a trade in place that would be unofficial and non-binding, and that's the great irony here, and I do think I'm using it right this time. If someone would do to Josh McDaniels what Josh McDaniels did to the Colts 5 years ago, when it's not official, you can bail. Come March 15, when it's time for the league year to begin and both teams to turn the key to launch the trade, if you say, we decided not to do it, there's no consequence as far as the league is concerned now. It makes you kind of a pariah among other teams. It hurts relationships. It pisses people off. But you have every right under the rules to say, I'm not going forward with the trade. You're stuck with Derek Carr and his $40.4 million. Here's my theory. What if Dave Ziegler and or Josh McDaniels have convinced Mark Davis to go ahead and let February 15 come and go? Let the $40.4 million become fully guaranteed. We accept that. We own that. We trade him with that as part of the reality that has to be worked out. We all know it's now on the table. It's got to be worked out. And one of the ways it's got to be worked out? Derek Carr's got to give up some of that money if he wants to be traded to another team. And if he doesn't give up some of his money, he's Baker Mayfield 2022. He's guy who's sitting and rotting with no team to go practice with in the offseason. They may be banking on a psychological assessment of the personality of Derek Carr that he will not sit there with his arms folded, stewing, knowing he's going to get $40.4 million, but he's not allowed to play for anyone. And in theory, he could barge in. He could say, I'm here, deal with me. Would his ego allow him to do it? What happened when they benched him? What happened? He ran home. And that's fine. I don't mean that in a pejorative way, even if it sounded like that, and I know it did. But he didn't want to force his way into the locker room. My point is, he didn't say, tough crap, Mark Davis. You have to deal with me. I'll be a distraction. You have to deal with me. You can't send me home. You can't pull a Keyshawn Johnson or a Terrell Owens on me. The rules don't allow that anymore. You have to deal with me. So I'll be there day one of the offseason program. I'll be there day two. I'll be there for practice. I'll be there for training camp. And you have to deal with me even if you're not going to actually play me in the games. And you're going to pay me $40.4 million to basically be your new Marcus Allen. Remember when they put Marcus Allen on ice for multiple years and they just didn't play him? So I think there's a possibility, and I hadn't thought about this until the news yesterday, that they're going to pay. They're not going to pay. They're going to take on the obligation, and then at some point later, they'll trade him. With him taking less, maybe the Raiders paying some of it like the Browns did. They still saved $9 million plus with the transaction to the Panthers over what they would have paid him. But that may be where this goes. And maybe the rush isn't to make him the first guy traded. Maybe the play is let the musical chairs play out with all these other veteran quarterbacks. When the music stops, somebody's not going to have a quarterback. That's when we start our trade talks. That's I hadn't thought of that until yesterday's news.
Yeah, and I read that post at PFT that you did, and it that is the thing that kind of makes this make sense in the puzzle, where you have Derek Carr, who has said goodbye to the Raiders. You have the Raiders, who have already ostensibly moved on from Derek Carr, but then it's kind of like, okay, well, how do you massage that in the way that makes it all right? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I hope that Derek Carr would say, if that's the way that the Raiders want to play it, right? If they say, we're going to squat on this contract, we're going to squat on you, I would hope that Derek Carr just shows up, make this uncomfortable for them, because they're the ones who did this. You want to play. You want to show that you can be a championship caliber quarterback. You have done everything you possibly can to show that you are the guy. Right? Think of all the things and all the leadership qualities that he's shown the 2021 season. And for whatever reason, it didn't quite work that well with Josh McDaniels this year. But if they're the ones who are making the decision to get rid of you after they already guaranteed you this money, then why should you make it comfortable for them? If they have made that decision already, then it's like, cut me or let me go somewhere else. Let's figure this out. I don't think that's, in a human way, I don't know that that's the best route for the Raiders to go, because it really would put the ball in Derek Carr's court to then make this as uncomfortable as possible for the Raiders. And I think that he should.
But I think they'd be banking on the fact that he won't. That it is contrary to his personality to create those problems. That he would look at it and say, I had great memories here. I've made plenty of money. They want to move on. And I don't want to just sit home and make $40.4 million over the next 2 years. I want to go play football. I want to prove them wrong. His desire to prove them wrong may overcome his desire to get the full $40.4 million. And from the Raiders' perspective, if they can get him to take less, and if they pay some of it, that maximizes their draft pick compensation. And remember, those draft picks have a dollar value. 2017, the Texans sent a second-round pick to the Browns to take Brock Osweiler's $16 million fully guaranteed contract off their hands. How much money would the Raiders devote to Carr under $40.4 million to guarantee that they'll get something for him? And that's the other side of it, too. This is where ego comes into it. The Raiders don't want to cut him and get nothing for him and look like idiots. So the only way to avoid looking bad is to secretly pay him some money. Not secretly, we all find out about it, but quietly pay some of the contract and Derek Carr takes less, and it's a sliding scale for the new team. The more you have to pay the player, the less you give up in draft picks. The more you give up in draft picks, the less you want to pay the player. So the combination of Derek Carr taking less, the Raiders paying some, the Raiders can say, we got a second-round pick for Derek Carr, or whatever they get for him. And, Myles, the mere fact that Baker Mayfield didn't do it last year, because if any guy, when you look at the personality and what we know and what we've seen, if any guy in the NFL for the past 20 years was going to be the one to say, I'm showing up, deal with me, it would have been Baker Mayfield. And he didn't do it. He stayed home while they worked out this issue with his $19.9 million salary that he cut by $4.6 million to facilitate a trade to the Panthers. And it was too late. That's the other thing they have going for him. Hey, Derek, before you decide to just let this play out through the draft, look at what happened to Baker Mayfield last year. Don't you want to go somewhere and be ready to go day one? That's the power the Raiders have. And the more we talk about it, the more I think about it, I think we're on to something. If you're willing to take the risk that he just says, I still don't want to be traded, I'll take your $40.4 million to just be here or sit at home on my couch and not play. I think their assessment is he won't do that.
Well, he said in that statement, the fire to win a championship still burns deep inside me, and I'm paraphrasing that. But if that's the way he feels, then I guess you are banking on that. And yeah, I guess we're talking, as you just said, myself into it, where I think that actually makes sense for the Raiders, because I don't know. I mean, if it's me though, I just want a clean break. I want to move on. I don't want to deal with the things that the Browns were dealing with last year, where, you just have to think about Baker Mayfield for all of eternity until you finally get rid of him. Right. But at the same time, why would you give up an asset for nothing? Which is also what we were talking about last year with Jimmy Garoppolo, right? First of all, he wasn't healthy. Second of all, the 49ers didn't just want to cut him for nothing and not get anything. So it's one of those situations where, Derek Carr is one of the quarterbacks in this league that you can ostensibly drop onto a team that needs a QB, and, you're a playoff contender. But at the same time, if you're the Raiders, why just give up an asset for nothing? So it's going to be this interesting situation to see how it plays out.
Now, look, the other side of this very well may be that as Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels, GM and head coach respectively of the Raiders, try to talk Mark Davis into this plan, Davis decides 2 weeks from today, I'm not comfortable taking on the $40.4 million. This is not one of the richer owners in the league. This is a guy that from time to time we hear there are cash flow issues. I don't know that it's true. I just know what others have reported and said. I don't want to get sued for defamation for suggesting that Mark Davis, who drives around in a Mini Cooper, isn't a multi-billionaire. But, it may be that at the end of the day, he says to Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels, hey guys, I'll go through with this, but if this blows up, it's your ass. It's not mine. It's yours. Maybe. I don't really mean this, but I could see Davis kind of say to McDaniels and Ziegler, all right, how about this? You give up your buyouts beyond 2023 if this blows up in my face, so I can fire you guys and not owe you money too. That would be funny if Mark Davis played that card. But that's the thing. If you're going to do it, if you're going to take on that $40.4 million, you want to be damn sure you're not going to get stuck, Myles, with $40.4 million.
Right. And that's what I mean when I'm saying that if you're a team that wants Derek Carr, you need to know that Derek Carr is also interested in you. And you've said this many times. Why would a team go after a quarterback that they know does not want to be there? You're not going to do that. And part of the issue right now, too, is that there is so much fluctuation with coaching staffs, right? Half the league basically needed an offensive coordinator last week, and now some of those positions have been filled. But I mean, you just don't really know where things are going to land, where things are going to end up. And some of that's going to be finalized within the next couple of weeks. But at the same time, it's like you need to really know where it is that you want to be if you're Derek Carr in order to facilitate a trade, right? Unless all of these musical chair seats get filled up by different veteran quarterbacks. And then it's April and it's almost the start of the offseason program. It's like, well, there's this team that I know that I really want to go to. That team really wants me. And, I'm still here and I'm still a Raider and I got this on my contract. And, maybe I should take away some of that so I can definitely get out of here. And it's all these different types of things. I don't know, man. It's a weird situation that we haven't necessarily seen before because that date that we've got in mid-February, where it's kind of the guarantees kick in. Well, it's not kind of, but it's kind of a drop dead date, right? Where the guarantees kick in and he should either be a free agent or he isn't, versus, usually we see this kind of stuff happen at the beginning of the new league year or at the beginning of the regular season.
And, this all started because the Raiders didn't want the distraction last year of Josh McDaniels taking over as head coach and Derek Carr not having a contract beyond 2022. They could have just said, we're fine completing this year of his contract. We don't need to have a contract that goes beyond this year. But then one of the talking points all year long would have been, are they really sold? Is the new regime really all in for Derek Carr? Well, of course they are. They gave him a new contract. Meanwhile, secretly, they're asking themselves every day, are we really all in with this guy? And they decide after 15 games, no, we're not. Let's find a way out of this mess that we created because we didn't want people asking us the questions. I mean, they kind of have gotten what they deserve. The fact that they were so worried about appearances and scrutiny and questions as they assessed whether or not Derek Carr was their guy, they bought this placeholder contract, this right to that's what it really was. It's a right to decide whether or not we want to keep him. Now they have to clean the mud off their shoes or something else even smellier than that. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.